Most people do not view feedback as a gift, but it is.
They don't view it as you doing them a favor.
The people that will tell you're doing a great job and you're doing great work when you're not, they are your enemies. They are hurting your ability to progress in your career.
Sharing really hard feedback with people you love and work with is extremely hard.
And on the other side of feedback, the other side of taking accountability in your career is freedom. You will earn more, you will be happier, you'll have better bosses, you'll have better experiences at work. It's freedom. All right, welcome back to the Rise Over Run podcast. I am Doug Barnett. I'm here with my co-host and co-founder, Reno Mendenhall.
What's up?
What's up? We're going to talk about taking ownership for all the things that happen in your career today. Speaking as parents, this is one of the things that's very, very difficult to do as a dad, is helping your children understand that the things that happen to them is their fault and they have responsibility for. It is not a natural thing for humans to take ownership, Reno.
And I was thinking about this morning. I think behind like authenticity, I think like ownership / accountability is probably like my favorite characteristic in humans and friends and coworkers. And I'm trying to instill it as well in my family. Just letting my kids know, as you said, like when something happens in my house, it's like, yeah, but so-and-so made me do it. Or it was because of this, or you made me do this because you made me go to bed at this time. Like, and everything I want them to realize, like, if everyone just had the attitude like it's all your fault and it's all up to you, work, family, everything would be so much easier.
Yep.
So much easier.
So my eldest son is almost 19. And when he was, I think, a junior in high school, we started having him read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. The first 3 habits talk about winning the private victory. And the winning the private victory precedes winning the public victory. And habit 1 talks about being proactive and basically expanding your circle of influence that then decreases your circle of control, the things that control you. That as you take ownership, it's like this freeing exercise. And it's totally changed my son's life. It's enabled him to really understand that the things that happen to him are up to him. As we transition and think about this through the lens of your career and why this is an important, maybe the most important attribute of defining success for yourself in your career, why would you rank this, other than maybe authenticity, so high on your list of things that matter to you?
Extreme ownership is like the mantra of door-to-door sales. And we were raised in Vivint through like Todd Peterson, and still pretty much all my best friends to this day come from that industry just because they're great people. If you have high accountability, you're normally like a great contributor to society. You don't blame anybody. It's very attractive. It's very contagious. You just like to be around them. And I think I learned that early on as I started my direct-to-home career, because you wake up, you go outside, and you have nothing planned. You have to create a ton of value. And if you don't create value, you're by yourself all day, so there's no one to be like, yeah, but
this person did
no
this.
one did anything but you, so it's all on you. So I think it was instilled in me very early on, and I'm super glad it was, because we had great leaders, we had a great culture to where if you didn't perform, it was your fault. There was nothing else. So that's why I think it's, to me, arguably, like I said, just behind authenticity, but someone, even in athletics, like coaches, the best coaches in the world, they could have the best game plan and their players don't carry it out. And the coach can only do like so much, we all know that, but a great coach always takes accountability. He's like, hey, this was my fault. And those are the kind of people you want to play for. So when we're recruiting or we're hiring, that to me is like who I want to hire and work with.
My boss at Vivint used to say in a joking manner, because his actions were the opposite of this, yeah, if this goes poorly, I'm going to blame it on you. And if it goes well, I'm taking all the credit.
That's a great leader.
Funny enough, he would say it jokingly and then do the opposite in actions.
Yep.
But that is many people's approach to their career. If I have this idea and no one listens, you all are idiots for not listening to me, or you don't respect me. I got passed up for this promotion. You didn't see me. As you are growing in your career, if you don't have the ability to interact with other people and learn to be a good teammate, the natural reaction is just the blame game. I'm going to pass it off to you. If for whatever happens, something happened to me instead of me acting upon that thing.
But that's so hard to wrap. Don't you think like we're kind of beyond that? Because everybody knows accountability and like ownership is one of the most important things to even be successful. There's no one successful that doesn't like extreme ownership or extreme accountability. And when someone does that, they think it like makes them, you do that to not make you look stupid, right? But in reality, like everyone that sees people do that, it just makes you look really, really dumb. So I don't even know, it's kind of like this dichotomy of like, hey, not my fault, your fault. But everybody that looks at people who says that is like, they're not a great leader, as opposed to them just saying, you know what, I messed this up. People have so much more respect for people who just own everything.
That's true. However, my experience I have seen is that we tend to judge other people's off their actions and judge ourselves off our intentions. And it's very difficult to look at yourself and be really, really honest.
Very hard.
About whether or not you delivered real value or your idea was excellent or you should have gotten the promotion. In nearly every scenario, anytime that I've been promoted, I was promoted a year after I thought I was ready and that I should have been promoted. I mean, that's probably very normal.
There's a book written by Jocko Willink that kind of made this phrase famous, which is extreme ownership, and no bad teams, just bad leaders. It's not what you not what you preach, it's what you tolerate. And feedback's hard. Feedback's really, really hard. And starting a company, it gets, just like in direct to home, you get exposed for better or for worse a lot when you're like, if you're just in a startup with 10 people as opposed to like a large corporation of 600 people, it's a lot easier to hide.
Yeah, so there's a lot of similarities between being an early person that has to sell door to door. You're like standing on the concrete pavement. You've been out there for 5 hours. No one wants to talk to you. You can just go home, make no money. And
blame it on something. There's a million reasons to go home.
Or just,
million reasons.
Or just go home and but blaming it on someone else isn't going to put money in your bank account. So it teaches you this frame of reference that ultimately the results live and die by you. That is actually exactly what it means to be a founder.
Yep.
Whether or not the company moves forward that day, it's up to you. And especially at a very early stage, it's like you and maybe one other person, maybe two other people. You know, the first time I heard this phrase, I'm sure other people heard it in other scenarios, but I heard it first from Blake Murray, the founder of Divvy, where Blake said during COVID, it was very, very difficult time. Their business was other companies would spend money on their credit cards and they would take a fee on that spend.
When COVID hit, people stopped spending.
They stopped spending. So their revenue is doing this. Blake's brother, who's in the military, basically said to him and said, Blake, nobody's coming. It's up to us. Through the lens of your career, if you take this approach, no one's coming, it's up to me. Essentially, it's like if you don't get promoted, the first question that you should ask shouldn't be, why did that person get promoted? You should ask yourself, what was it about me that made it so that I didn't get the promotion?
Yep.
And then go on an exercise of discovery and go to your boss and ask, what was it specifically? You know, there's this, exercise they teach you as an MBA, the 5 whys. Okay, go ask 5 different layers down into why something happened. Almost no one has the courage or desire to do that.
That's a lot harder. And I was reading online, someone said, someone paid this guy, or he went to like 10 of his like closest friends, relatives, and co-workers and said, hey, listen, he had these questions for him that were like brutal. And he wanted like really, really hard feedback about himself. He's like, it was the best thing I've ever done, but it was like it was the hardest thing, like legitimately the hardest thing he's ever done. Because hearing that you're not good at something or hearing why you didn't get promoted, it takes a lot of courage. And it's extremely hard. And I don't think a lot of people can really take it. Like it's just hard. And so if you don't do it, I mean, ignorance is bliss, right? You're like, he must have got it over me, so it's easier to make up in my mind, oh, he did it because of this and this. And it's really hard actually to like confront what's happening.
The desire to change and changing are 2 very different things.
Yeah, one's easy,
which is
one's
why
hard.
The gym is very busy on January 3rd and not so busy on June 3rd.
That's exactly right.
Because the desire to change is much stronger than the will to change. If somebody is going to say, I want progression in my career. What that's going to mean is you have to grow. Like literally you have to grow, which means you didn't come out perfect. You didn't show up to the workplace in a perfect state, which means you're going to have to change or develop new skills, etc. Which means you have to, at the base level of this thing, really understand who you are. So what are the things that you can do to figure out who you are?
Yeah.
Go start with a personality test.
Yep.
There's lots of good ones. We like the Big Five test here at Remi.
We have everyone run through that.
Everyone takes it. It's almost always surprising for many people.
We also do working with documents. It's kind of like a self-declaration of like, hey, I work great here and my strengths are here and my weaknesses are here. And as you read it about some people are spot on and some people are like, you kind of have a misconception about yourself because you're really not that great at that, or you are better than you think at this. So that helps out a lot, the personality test, and also creating working with docs for your coworkers. That helps out a ton. That's been great for our culture.
It is awesome. If you want to learn kind of the foundation of the working with Doug, working with Reno, we got the idea from working with Claire. Claire Hughes Johnson was the COO at Stripe. The initial idea came in a book that was written by Elad Gil, which is the High Growth Handbook for startups. And in there, she did an interview with Elad that basically talked about this working with doc. She wrote a book from that interview called Scaling People. And she goes in very depth about why these documents are really important. But being able to write your own document about how you work with other people, you can't just like guess.
Yeah.
You have to like be able to articulate what you're good at, what you're not good at, why you want to communicate a certain way, why you want to lead another way, etc.
And how long have we worked together? Known each other? 10 years? 10 years plus? Been in and around each other? I think that's probably been one of your superpowers is like, you're probably one of the most self-aware leaders that I've ever worked with. Is that like a natural thing or did you like really have to work on that? Because for me, I feel like I'm self-aware, but I also probably feel like I think I'm really good at things that I'm probably not great at. And you've helped me out a lot with that, but how did that come about throughout your career? Or has that just been easy? Because most people, it's not easy to say, hey, I'm not good at this. And you do it all the time.
I had a boss where I was ambitious enough that I would press the gas pedal on responsibility constantly for a decade. And
you mean just taking what you're responsible for and going above
yeah, I would
and
ask for more. It's like, I think I can do this. I think I can do this. I think I can do this. And
dream employee.
And my boss would support me in that. And then when my boss would go to other members of the leadership team and they would disagree with him very routinely about me, and he'd ask why, and they'd get feedback about me, and he would deliver that feedback to me. I'll share a couple bits of that feedback. One of them was I was too definitive in how I would say things. So I would like anchor on an opinion, and I wouldn't move off the opinion. And I realized—
What did you used to say? Strong convictions, loosely held.
Yeah.
That's where you landed now.
Well,
because you do speak with like, for lack of a better word, authority and conviction,
Yep.
which is great as a leader and great as a teammate.
But what I needed to help people understand was I would speak with conviction and I would be willing to be the first one to express an opinion. But I have strong opinions loosely held, which means if you can present data or other intuition about why you believe my opinion is wrong, I will move.
No, that's one of the things I've stole from you. I now have strong convictions loosely held,
And so
which I kind of don't, but I want to.
I had to learn how to tell people, hey, I'm gonna be loud and vocal because I wanna start the decision-making process. One of the things I hate is decision by committee. I want to make a decision, center it around data, try to make it informed, all those things. But then if it's wrong, we can pivot. There are very few one-way streets on decisions.
And you do act with that, because I've been in meetings with you to where we start at one point and you're like very convicted, and then at the end we slightly adjust from it and it's fine.
Yep.
No one's offended. It gets the conversation going. But someone has to have that. It helps when someone has that conviction to start a conversation. You're like, this is what we're doing, and then that allows for everyone to chime in.
But until I understood the feedback that people thought I was just kind of a dictator in the way that I was communicating, I had to learn how to express that to people so that they could react appropriately. Another example is I had to learn how to be a leader in such a way where I could see all of the great qualities of my teammates, the people that I was overseeing, and I would tend to favor them over the qualities of teammates that did not report directly to me. And I had to begin to get more understanding of how to evaluate people that I was not working with directly. I would pay my people better than most other departments because I fought for them and I wanted them to make great money and have great career opportunities, etc. I had to learn to balance a lot of those things. So these are just like two examples of things that I needed to get feedback on to continue to kind of progress in my career. And what I have found is most people do not view feedback as a gift, but it is. It's a gift.
They don't view it as you doing them a favor at all.
No, they view it as you're a hater.
That's right.
You don't like me. You're against me.
Yep.
That's not true. In fact, the people who are against
That's
you
how my
are-
kids take it.
Yeah,
at
of
least.
course. That's how teenagers take it. Yes, I have one of those, and she views my feedback as hate toward her. It's the exact opposite of that. The people that will tell you're doing a great job and you're doing great work when you're not, they are your enemies because they are hurting your ability to progress in your career and really define for you what you're great at and what you're not great at.
And also even worse, it's just they don't care. They just don't care. They're like, hey, you're doing a great job, keep doing whatever. They don't care. And that's what I tell my kids all the time to that point. It's like, if I didn't love you, if I didn't care, I'd just let you keep doing what you're doing.
Yep.
But that's exactly the same thing. And to your point, one of my biggest points of feedback as a leader, I try to be very, very optimistic in every way. And no matter what happens, it's kind of like, oh, it'll be fine. And what I got this feedback when I was leading sales teams is they're like, hey, Reno, when something bad happens, we don't feel like you acknowledge it. Because when something bad happens and they come to me and be like, hey, it'll be all right, just keep cranking. But that for them was like, you're not even listening to my problem. And because in my mind, it's like I could react two ways. Like if something's going bad, I could be like, oh, let's wallow in misery together, or just like stay positive about Overcome it. But I needed to find that happy medium to let my people know, like, I'm listening, I'm in it with you.
Yep.
I'm not gonna act like you are, but I'm gonna listen and understand and validate it. But I wasn't doing that. So that to me was like probably one of my best. I didn't want to hear it for sure, and it took me a while to like actually understand what was happening. But it was a huge gift,
Which was essentially having empathy for what people were dealing with.
And I'm lacking in that area, very much so.
But what's interesting about this is low empathy is usually probably tied to extreme ownership. It's like, hey, we're getting over this.
Yep.
We're not gonna dig in and wallow in misery of the problem. The other thing here is, okay, so one, I'm gonna build a foundation of who I am. There are probably attributes that are true about you that you don't like that are gonna be very difficult to change. It's just the truth.
Yeah.
Because they're part of just who you are. And most great strengths are also biggest weaknesses.
Definitely.
And understanding that, here's another piece of feedback I've learned in my career. I am very, very malleable. I can change very quickly. I can take new data, completely move off an idea onto the next one, and I'm very easy to pivot. But some people aren't. And so if I move too quickly, it scares people. And they think I'm being reckless. That ability is a superpower, but it also can be a very, very big weakness if I'm not evaluating very carefully why we should change. So layer one is you've got to understand yourself, and if you're early on in your career, you need opportunities to learn about yourself. I'm coaching even my nephews right now. Seek the feedback. Rather than waiting for the feedback to come to you, sitting in a one-on-one with your boss, you're like, do you have any feedback for me? That's a really bad question. Here's another way to seek the feedback. Here's good questioning in your one-on-ones. Hey, Reno, you're my boss. We were working on this project. Do you have any feedback around how I executed on this piece? I think I did a good job here, but I just want to make sure you agree. And go down the list and seek direct feedback on very different areas. Things you could seek feedback on. Communication style. How fast you picked up a topic. Are you learning quickly? Did you deliver a high quality of work? Did you deliver a good volume of work? Like speed? There are so many things that you can go and attack and learn about yourself that people just don't spend time even thinking about.
And those tests that we take, when we first took them, I'm like, I don't know if this, and they're literally like very, very dialed.
It's terrifying, actually.
Very terrifying. So that's a great place to start. I completely agree.
So take a personality test, begin to seek feedback, and then the last step here is when you get the feedback, don't reject it. If you get feedback from someone and you don't like the feedback, the next question in your mind should be, do I respect this person? Do I respect the person that's giving me this feedback? If you don't, then why do you report to them? Go get a new job.
Yeah.
That's like the clearest signal that it's time to go find a new career opportunity. That's a different set of problems.
Yeah, you don't want to take advice or feedback from anybody who you don't trust, and also who you probably wouldn't want to trade places with.
Yeah,
there's a bunch of people that'll give you feedback.
If I look at my boss for a decade at Vivint, that man represents a lot of what I want to be. An incredible father. He's an amazing husband, a very successful, ethical, honest executive. And so that was someone that I could look at and say, that's who I want as a mentor and as a boss. And so when I got feedback from that person, I would use it and respect it. So that's step one.
And if I'm an employee and I don't have that as a boss, what would you suggest that I do?
Go find someone in the organization that you do respect that can either deliver feedback to you in a very consistent way because they're familiar with your work, or go find a new job. You are at a bad.
It's hard to work for people who you don't want to be like in some form. You don't have to be exactly like them, but in some form or fashion, if their principles and ethics don't align with yours, it's hard to work for them.
So if you checked that box, you're like, I respect this person, I like this person, I want to emulate them at some point in my career, then this is the ownership piece. Then take it and do something about it. And take ownership for if you didn't get promoted, if you didn't get the raise, if you didn't get the more responsibility, and realize that you've got to change something about yourself, and then do it. And then if you do those things, the virtuous cycle, the feedback loop that begins to happen in your career is magic. You get everything that you want. By doing the things that you don't want to do, most of the things that you want come to pass. It's just true. If people can realize this, they're happy. Or, this is what happened to me. I got to the point in my last job where I didn't believe that I could progress at the speed that I wanted to progress any longer. So it was time to make a drastic change. And that's why I became a founder. I think most people are just going through the motions, robotic, with their career. But I'm like, Tyler Hogue, our investor here at Remi and our friend, he quotes Andy Grove, the former CEO of Intel, your career is your company and you are the CEO. If you don't like then do something about it, which is once again ownership. It's very, very difficult to do. Anything else that you feel like we didn't cover here?
Yeah, I think we should talk about briefly, part of extreme ownership, especially as a leader, is sharing really hard feedback with people you oftentimes have great relationships with, you love, and that's really, really hard to do. Most people have the tendency to have a personality where they want to be liked, and sharing really hard feedback with people you love and work with is extremely hard. And I try it with my kids and everything. You try to be like, hey, Doug, you do this really well, but you don't do this very good. Like, is there a right or a wrong way to do it? Because I don't think people do that very well, and that can go a long way in how the other person receives it, whether it's effective or whether it just goes off the rails.
At least in business, the way that I've tried to approach this, and I don't claim to be perfect at it, but establishing it from day one, saying to your direct report, hey, we're going to establish a relationship of trust up front. I just want you to know, I have no feedback for you today, the beginning of our working relationship, but I'm going to deliver feedback for you. And the foundation of this feedback and this relationship should be bidirectional. So if you had feedback for me, I want it, and I expect you to give it to me. And vice versa, I'm going to give it to you, and you need to receive it and listen and take action against it. We're not doing that today, but that is going to happen. And then saying, and the reason that I want this for you is tell them the purpose. I need you to grow. I expect you to grow. For us to achieve the goals that we're going to have as a company, as a team, whatever role that you're in, I need you to be the best version of yourself, and you need me to be the best version of myself. And so the only path to get there is we're going to have to improve, because if the slope of the company is doing this, and we're not doing this, and we're not growing, then the company's getting worse. That is the only path that I know.
Set clear expectations from the very beginning.
From the very beginning, I'm going to set it up very clear.
And let them know, when I give you this, I don't want you to receive it poorly. I'm not mad. You shouldn't be mad. It's just helping both of us grow. And I want that from you as well.
Okay, then when it comes to actually giving feedback, I learned about question-based selling and helping people uncover things for themselves. And so I like to start with questioning, which is, okay, I want to talk about this project and I want to give you some feedback. And then I'm going to ask a question. How do you think you did? How do you think this went? How do you think the team think this went? And let them talk
What if
first.
I say, I think it went amazing. I think I did an amazing job.
Okay, and then I'm going to go one layer deeper, and I'm going to say, okay, so you think it went amazing. What parts do you think went amazing? A friend of ours, Jeff Mendez, he used to say in sales, I want to put my prospect on stage, meaning I'm going to make them respond. And I have found in giving feedback, it's much easier if they can begin to peel the onion back for themselves versus me just going right to the heart of the matter. And so I'm just going to say, okay, tell me exactly why you feel that way, and I want you to break it down project by project. Now, I might even get learnings about why they were thinking the way that they were thinking, why they executed something the way that they did by doing this. And then, but as they are doing it, oftentimes the lights start coming on. They're like, actually, this was good, but like I wanted to do, and they begin to start uncovering things for themselves. That is the way that I feel like feedback is best delivered, is through me asking questions to my report, helping us get to the conclusion where I want us to get together versus just delivering it directly.
And I think most people, when they're honest with themselves, want it like that. They don't want you to try to fluff it up. They don't want you to try to, and if you help them understand it, I think that goes a long way. And once they do understand it, it's more validating because it's almost like they arrived at that conclusion without you having to tell them, but you got to the same point.
Often I have found that the people that are very attuned to the weaknesses, to our weaknesses, we view as people that we do not want feedback from. Because those people are like the antagonists to our story. Giving them audience is a very useful way to also collect feedback as a boss. I wish this wasn't true, but oftentimes there are departments that kind of do this, whether it's product
Sales
versus
and
engineering,
operations.
sales versus marketing, etc., where it's kind of like there's a little bit of a rub between the groups. That is a pretty good place to begin to uncover truth about where someone can grow. And so there's ways that you can kind of like get feedback, and then you have to validate it as a boss. You can't just take what someone said as truth. You have to be very, very good. As a boss, your job is to be a tastemaker for greatness, to know what great work looks like. And if you can't do that, then you shouldn't be the boss. You have to have a very good sense for what great feels and looks like. And then once you have that developed, it's much easier to give feedback that people will believe. So it's almost just as hard to be the one giving the feedback as it is the one receiving it.
I think it's harder.
It
It's
may be
oftentimes harder.
It takes more skill. It
Definitely.
In both in the way that it's delivered and the way that you have to understand what feedback to deliver to your prospect.
So what happens when feedback doesn't go well?
So there's the two sides of this: you receiving feedback and you delivering feedback.
Both parties have to do their job, or it's a disaster.
Both parties, but also what happens if you're the leader and you've delivered feedback to your direct and it doesn't go well. So we'll talk about that first. My experience here is it doesn't fix itself. If you've delivered feedback once and some time passes and nothing has changed, I have very rarely seen it happen where this now will just magically get fixed the second time, because there was something about that feedback that made the person that you delivered it to not open to receiving it. Whatever that was, whether either one, they don't want to change, or they don't feel like they should change, those are both bad outcomes.
Or they don't trust you enough to feel like you know what you're talking about.
That's another great one. It's probably one of those three scenarios is probably true. And so my experience has been, after you've delivered one round of feedback on a specific topic that's a very important topic for an employee, crucial to their job, important part of their growth, etc., and you deliver it again, and it's not like a very clear, it's probably time to move on.
How much time do you give? Because it's different within, like, some corporations do this, large corporations do this extremely well. A lot, though, don't, right? I feel like accountability kind of like dissolves somewhere in the middle. So oftentimes they're probably not getting the feedback they want to, but I don't know if people will agree with me, but in a startup, it's more magnified.
Yep.
Like, you have to move quicker, and you can move quicker. So if you give someone feedback, they don't accept it, they don't feel like you know what you're talking about, they don't think it's the right feedback. Like, what is the timeline for that? How long do you put up with that?
The timeline should be relevant to whatever the feedback is.
Yeah.
So let's say you're talking about the quality of code that an engineer is writing. We're talking like weeks. Like, this is like a couple weeks. You've got to start delivering very high quality product. Or if you're talking to a designer, it's like, okay, I don't like how you communicated with our partner in the business where you're designing assets for them. The next chance, we better have improvement.
And that goes back to your point of setting all the expectations up front. So if something does happen, and they should not be surprised by anything.
Correct. On the flip side, if you're getting the feedback, and the feedback that you received, like we've already talked about, the feedback you've received is from someone that you respect, that you want to mimic your career after, and you don't like it and you don't want to change, I hate to have to deliver this news to you, but you have hit a brick wall in your career. And unless you change and until you change, changing jobs is not going to fix it. Changing bosses isn't going to fix it. And you will be in misery for quite some time.
But we see that all the time with people who bounce around to different companies.
This is the default. What this is what happens to most people because they are unwilling to accept the feedback and because change is hard.
Very hard, and feedback's hard, change is hard. And I think if everyone asked themselves, like, before everyone looks externally for most, like, problems of what's affecting them, if everyone would just look internally and ask, what am I doing wrong, or what can I do better, that solves everything. No one does that.
Honestly,
but that would solve everything.
The thing that's so funny about this is taking feedback, taking ownership and accountability for your weaknesses and your strengths, putting yourself in positions to succeed because you know yourself, is the single largest freeing thing you could possibly do in your life and your career. It's like, I'm old, so like Braveheart, great movie. At the very end, something terrible happens to William Wallace. They slice him open, and he just screams freedom. And that's what it is. It is literally the most freeing thing you could possibly experience. I just read this quote today by Catherine Boyle, who's a general partner at Andreessen Horowitz, where she said, basically our election cycle is designed for Americans. And it's ridiculous, and it's super extreme, and it's meant to put our candidates through the most crazy cycle where there's no hiding. All the flaws are coming out, all the realities are coming out, because it's a representation of the revolution of America, where we wanted to go through this really hard thing because on the other side of the hard thing was freedom. And on the other side of feedback, the other side of taking accountability in your career is freedom. You will earn more, you will be happier, you'll have better bosses, you'll have better experiences at work. It's freedom, like you've never experienced.
People will respect you more as a leader. When a leader comes to me and is like, listen, I'm normally not great at this, you might have to put up with this, I'm working on this, you don't judge them for the weaknesses. You actually think you actually have more respect for them and want to work with them. Far more.
My co-founders who know my weaknesses very well, one of my weaknesses is I don't write things down. I keep all this stuff in my head. And Brant tells me all the time, like, hey, I know you're keeping this in your head, but you need to do X, Y, and Z to make it better for the company. When you acknowledge your weaknesses, people are okay with them. They don't expect you to be perfect.
Yep.
How can they? So you're exactly right. It is an incredible gift to yourself if you're willing to do this. So that's probably a wrap on today's episode.
That's a wrap.
Hopefully,
That was great.
hopefully somebody found this worthwhile. We will catch you guys on the flip.